The 2020 Educators Conference presented by Buckeye Book Fair and Tri-County Educational Service Center. My name is Andrew Johnson and I'm going to be your host this afternoon. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. I know that we all have really busy schedules and it means a lot that you're here. Before we begin, I also want to encourage you to utilize the chat feature and the Q&A feature inside a Zoom webinar. I will make sure to keep track of questions that are asked, and we will address questions that you have. So if you do have a question, either put it into Q&A or type it into the chat box and we'll make sure to get it answered. Today's session is going to last for approximately an hour. And additionally, at the end of the session today, I will provide you with a link and a QR code to follow to complete it's a very short survey. So you can earn a certificate for professional development contact hours. Today, I'm happy to introduce our featured presenter, our keynote, Judy Carey Nevin. Judy's a children's book author who began as an editor at Viking Children's Books, where she specialized in picture books and easy to read books. She enjoyed very much bringing books into the world and is very proud of her own books. Judy is currently a library director in Ohio, where she lives with her nerdy husband and their brilliant daughter. In today's session, Judy is going to focus on working with picture books specifically for children ages 0 to 7. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Judy. Thanks for joining us today, Judy.
Thanks, and thanks for the introduction, Andrew. So I have to say one thing about the ages 0 to 7. That age range is a little flexible. So what I talk about may not come across as looking appropriate for some of that age range, but we're going to talk about how that you can make it possible. So I just wanted to put that out there. So I'm going to share my screen. This will stop other screen sharing. Yes.
You're good.
Okay. And this is it. There I am. You should recognize that photo. It's everywhere because it's the one nice photo I have. So, but I am going to point to this. It will sound weird now, but I'm pointing out these gray hairs right here and the one hanging down by my ear. You'll understand more later, but it is, it will be funny. Just pay attention there. Oh, there's even some over there. Okay. As you heard from Andrew, my name is Judy Carey Nevin. I'm so happy to be speaking to you all today because I'm among my people. I'm a mom to an elementary school student who is a big reader. I'm a librarian. I used to edit children's books, as you heard, and of course, I write children's books. I can talk children's books morning, noon, and night. No lie. But I am going to be upfront with you about my talk today. It's my first conference talk as an author. I used to be on the SCBWI circuit. That's the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. It's a mouthful. It took me forever to be able to say all of that. I used to speak to eager authors about how to get their submissions seen by editors. I worked with middle school students demonstrating what an editor does, as well as how that might relate to revising their own work. More recently, I have been a guest speaker for the Central Ohio SCBWI chapter about my own path to publication. But yet, I've never spoken at a conference as an author. And here we are during a pandemic, doing it on Zoom for my first time. It'll give me a story to tell for a long, long time, and I hope you as well. I've seen a lot of presenters in my time as a librarian. Once I accepted the invitation to speak here, the pressure was on. I seriously sat, and I'm not kidding, this isn't just one of those made up things. I sat in front of my laptop at home with a blank slide for most of the part of an evening. No progress, no ideas, nothing. My first inclination was to go big. Certainly words have power. I think we can all agree on that. But My books can't exist without art. Maybe I should emphasize the art. I love children's book illustrations. I always have. I would almost say being interested in the illustrations is what brought me to children's literature as an adult. But I ran into a problem with this line of thinking. You might be seeing it a lot faster than I did. If the art is what carries a book, well, you see where that might be a problem for an author. So I believe I have reached a compromise. And I am confident I can commit to successfully making a case for books with pictures in them in the time I have available today. You can see the power of words at work here with my elementary school self. I very clearly remember thinking this outfit made me look like a teenager. At that time, it was the power of visual that gave me this confidence. But looking back now, the way we are now today, it's the power of the words that make this photo so fabulous. I was looking like a teenager when I was 7 or 8. And that means it was 1977 or 1978, which I hope explains the color. I have always been the youngest everywhere and have always wanted to catch up with the older kids. Such important words, catch up. It's also my daughter's favorite goofy tomato joke, catch up. But at the same time, I also loved the surprise in kids' voices when they learned how young I was. Another proud moment in my elementary school life is from 3rd grade. Our school offered grade level classes individually or in grade clusters. I was part of a 3rd, 4th grade cluster. I'll come back around and tell you a funny story about the orangutan boy later. It's worth the wait. All of the 4th graders in our school took a field trip to our middle school for an orientation. Our middle school spanned grades 5th through 8th. My classmates were clearly confused about why I was staying with the 3rd graders. I was in enough activities with those 4th graders that as far as they were concerned, I was a peer. I was so proud at that moment. Obviously, I still am to some extent. But trying to keep up is such a powerful feeling, isn't it? Age-related words are powerful too. Wait up, you're a baby. I look like a teenager. Words also have the power to find a long-forgotten memory. When a guy I was dating mentioned that his favorite movie when he was a kid was Every Which Way But Loose, and that he'd wanted an orangutan for a pet, I realized he was the orangutan boy from elementary school. I've always remembered a boy in our class and his love for orangutans. He loved them so much that he corrected people's words. The pronunciation of orangutan. There is no G at the end of that word. Knowing that gave him great power and to speak about what he knew about the orangutan. Without those powerful words to bring back my memory, I wouldn't have gone into our relationship realizing that I was going to marry the orangutan boy. Here again, you can see the power of words, this time from 2018. I confess, while I'm not at all ashamed of my age, I do laugh when I hear, I thought you look so much younger than that, whatever my age might be. While those comments are based on a visual, It's the power of the words that make an impression with me. Now here's the power of the image as it plays here. Remember when I pointed to those gray hairs in my picture? Let's play Spot the Gray Hair on this picture. There's all of the brown hair by my temples and no real gray hair to speak of by my ears. It's true what they say about stress giving us gray hair. 2 years later, and both temples are gray with plenty of sparkly bits appearing every day. Before I answer the question I like to ask of other authors, I need to go back to my elementary school self again. Remember me, the 8-year-old teenager. I was lucky to have parents who read to me and my brother from an early age. I evolved into an avid reader. I read in the car, at the bus stop, in school, and famously, by the light coming in under my bedroom door. And on other desperate occasions, by the light coming from the heat thermometer on my heating pad. This is crazy, but this is the model we had with a slightly different cover. I found it pretty quickly with a Google image search. The power of words and pictures, right? I don't know if you can see the little dial the arrow is pointing to, but there's a little circular temperature dial that spins. When the heating pad is on, the dial glows. That was my reading light in desperate times. But I digress. Did I ever think about wanting to be an author? I can honestly say I had never considered it. The closest I ever came was when I wrote a story in 2nd or 3rd grade about a cow and her new umbrella. She wanted very badly to use her new umbrella, but it didn't rain and didn't rain and didn't rain. Finally, she found a magic pebble and used it to wish for rain. It rained and rained and rained so much. She caught pneumonia and died. The end. I even included an illustration, which sadly I don't have anymore, of a headstone with an umbrella in front of it. Any guesses what my favorite book was? The power of that story was the power to spark an interest in a young reader or listener. Did it make me think I would grow up to be an author? No. But it certainly instilled a sense of pride in my writing. Stories inspire listeners and readers to use the bones of the story to create additional, more specialized stories that feel original to young, creative minds. I see it with my daughter all the time. She is another avid listener, reader. It's kind of hard not to be. She is surrounded by books. Her mother is a librarian and an author, and her father is a history professor. Just a few weeks ago, she told me she was going to write a book with 10 chapters, and every chapter would be 10 pages long. That's 100 pages. I managed to talk her out of preparing all 10 chapters before starting the project. We were folding paper in half and making little booklets. I think she lost steam after the 3rd or 4th chapter, so I was very happy we had not moved ahead with 10. But we got started right away. I'm her scribe and write everything verbatim as she makes up the story on the spot. Does it make sense? Rarely past the 1st chapter, if that. Is it unique? Without a doubt. Are there bones from another story? Yes. From at least 1, maybe 2, or 3, or even 4. We have had dinosaurs as characters. We have children discovering their family heritage is full of superheroes, which is great because they have been invited to an academy to learn how to use their superpowers in our story, much like Mia. And they are going to learn how to bond with their unicorns. In addition to naming characters after herself, my daughter's character names have included Ariana. Not sure you can see this, but the name of this is Ariana and Whisper. Many other character names from other books have made it into her books. I predict her next chapter will incorporate a sack that holds all sorts of things for just every situation which she can find at any moment. Inspired by Sassy and her Sassy Sack in Sharon Draper's Sassy series. The power of art to move us to write is where my life hit the crossroads of librarian and former editor and new parent. Way back in the mid-1990s through August 2001. It's important to stop here to point out this example of the power of words. We left New York City August 3rd, 2001. This becomes a very important distinction when we remember what took place on September 11th, 2001. Saying I was in New York City from the mid-1990s through 2001 would have a very different meaning. I worked at Viking Children's Books during those years in New York City. My specialty was identifying first-time authors and their picture books and very easy to reads, as Andrew mentioned in my introduction. One of my really proudest moments was that I acquired and edited the easiest easy to read Viking had ever published. Easy to reads were my pet peeve because I would see things marked easy and they would involve words with 3 syllables, sometimes just concepts that were beyond an early reader. So I was thrilled to be the one to find the easiest easy to read. Remind me to end with a really cool small world story about another crossroads with another author. Every book an editor works on is also worked on by a graphic designer or art director. Once the text is finalized by the author and the editor, this person has control over every other part of the final book. The font choice, the spacing on the pages, the layout of the all-important book cover we all know people use for selecting the books, even the color of the end papers. The woman who designed almost every one of my projects is Teresa Kalinsky, and she is now my literary agent. That alone is some powerful stuff, right? I'll spare you the long, small world story of our reunion, but I do need to go back to the time after I left Viking, before being a parent was on the horizon at all, long before I was thinking of being an author. Teresa was the only person in my life who periodically asked me if I was ready to write. She was confident I was going to write, that I could write, that I should write. And she wanted to give me a little nudge once in a while. I know I said the power of art, didn't I? And I just gave examples of more power of the word. Here it comes, I promise. Years after our time together at Viking, Teresa and I reconnected. Thank you, Facebook. She and I spent a lot of time chatting via Facebook Messenger. We're both night owls and loved being connected after a long absence from each other's lives. We were in our Viking days and are now very close friends. One particular time, Teresa mentioned that she wished she could find a project for a particular client because her art was so wonderful, and Teresa didn't have any projects lined up for her. So, being the children's book art loving person I am, I went right to the artist's site and noticed that she created really cute kittens and cats. Here's the art piece. I wondered what I might write that could maybe possibly give Teresa's client something to use, to make samples from, or maybe even to illustrate for a book project. What? Where did this come from? Well, my kitten text didn't get published. It started a brainstorming session with Teresa that led me to finally commit to the idea that I would like to do some more of this dabbling, which meant committing to a new relationship with Teresa as a client. I was officially starting my author journey, all because of some illustrations of cute kittens. This is why books with pictures work. They have the power to inspire children and adults. Words and stories can inspire us in so many ways. To rewrite a favorite book, to start a new story, peopled with characters and from favorite stories, to write something to accompany a piece of art, or to improve the text already paired with a piece of art or illustration. What I hope my current books encourage is for people to take a look at ourselves and the world around us and find even more examples of different kinds of kids. Because, as my book unequivocally states, all kids are good kids. We didn't have room for all of them. It's a board book. So play around with it. Make a list of your own. Ask your students for suggestions. Ask them this question, and I bet their answers will change from day to day, even hour to hour. And I hope you will also be encouraged to look for examples of kindness. Although I confess the title on this one is a little bit misleading. It doesn't really include all kinds of kindness. We should probably have a little asterisk somewhere that gives us an out. You know, all kinds of kindness, asterisk. The use of all is limited to what the author could think of between the months of June and August 2019. There's no way to list all kinds of kindness because there's always room for more kindness. New interpretations of a kind act. New and improved ways to show kindness. New people to share a kind act with. Talk to your students about it. Ask in what ways they like to be kind. And about times when someone showed kindness to them. Maybe they could find a picture that depicts their definition of kindness and maybe they'll end up writing a story about it. Thank you very much. Oh, I have to tell you my other small world story about another author. Way back when I was a brand new assistant editor, freshly minted, my college friend said his co-worker wanted to write a children's book. Could she send her manuscripts to me? At this stage, I probably took a deep breath before agreeing to see his friend's material. Why? Because finding someone as interested in writing a children's book is even easier than the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I bet you could think of someone right now who has dreams of writing a children's book. But lucky for everyone, my friend's colleague was the real deal, and I went on to sign her for what would become a long line of easy to read about a huge dog named Tiny. I'm very proud to say that they're still in print after more than 20 years, and she continues to write them. Carey Meister is the author. She has written books for so many different publishing companies about so many topics. It's truly incredible. She used to send me almost a manuscript a day back in the days of snail mail. So much so that I finally had to ask her to package them and send them once a week, or maybe even once every 10 days. Her mind works in mysterious ways. Anyway, this is longer than I meant to make it. Carey got her start at Viking almost from my first day of being an acquiring editor. Her books were almost certainly designed by Teresa Kalinske. And now, Carey is one of Teresa's most recent clients. What I'm seeing in telling these stories is that Teresa seems to be the connection in all of them. She is pretty incredible, and I'm starting to think she might even be a tiny bit magical. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I appreciate your attention and your smiles. I wish I could see them. I miss the good old days of being with groups of people when we could see each other's faces and know when someone was laughing or smiling or sleeping. But here we are on Zoom, and I'm so happy you're here with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy. That was wonderful. We're going to give a couple, just a minute or two to see if we get some questions that come in before we transition to the second half of our session today. I actually do have a question though for you.
Okay.
Do you do virtual visits? And if so, what are they like?
Yes, I'm happy to do them. I have not done them with live children. I have done in-person visits with little children, but I've never done a virtual visit. What I do in person is we read my books and then we talk about what kindness is. We talk about examples, how we might show kindness to others, why it's important, things like that. I also have my 2 earlier books are What Daddy's Like and What Mommy's Like. So we also, when I have those, we talk about what makes our daddy, special, what they like, what our mommy likes, and things like that. So it's a lot of brainstorming, talking about those things. And then with my 2 most recent, the art is pretty accessible. So we also look at how you can make a rectangle and make a circle and make it be something, and give it a little smiley face and look, magic, you have a picture.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if teachers or school officials were interested in bringing you in, would they would they send an email to the email that you showed on the screen earlier? Mm-hmm. Yep, that's who the contact is. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you very much. I don't think we have any questions in right now, so we will go ahead and transition to the second part of our session today. So thank you again, Judy.
Sure.
to the 2020 Buckeye Book Fair. Thank you for joining us for this series of virtual events with Ohio authors and illustrators. The Buckeye Book Fair provides an annual celebration of literacy through author visits, educational programs for K through 12 students, and events for people of all ages. All of the books featured today and throughout the entire Buckeye Book Fair are available for purchase at buckeyebookfair.org. Should you have any questions for the presenters, please click on the Q&A button and type them in the window that appears, and they'll be answered later in the session. Before becoming a children's author, Keila Dawson was a community organizer, teacher, school administrator, educational consultant, and advocate for children with special needs. Her latest offering, No Voice Too Small, 14 Young Americans Making History, is a picture book anthology of short biographies and poems about contemporary young activists. Cleveland author Tricia Springstubb is the author of many books for young readers, including picture books, chapter books, and middle grade novels. Her latest book, Khalil and Mr. Haggerty and the Backyard Treasures, is a heartwarming tribute to the love of good neighbours and to the strength of intergenerational and intercultural bonds. Thrity Umrigar is an award-winning reporter, columnist and magazine writer, and professor of English at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. She draws on her upbringing as a Parsi child in India for her latest story, Sugar in Milk, a beautiful picture book that recounts an ancient Indian-Persian legend about immigration and strangers helping one another, which teaches a timeless lesson about kindness, compassion, and the joy of diversity. Richard Cowdery is originally from Cincinnati, and he graduated from the Columbus College of Art and Design in 1981. His latest offering, Fiona, It's Bedtime, is a new follow-up to the blockbuster hit Fiona the Hippo and A Very Fiona Christmas, both based on the adorable hippo from the Cincinnati Zoo that became an internet sensation.
All right, so with that being said, we're going to welcome Keila Dawson.
Okay. Thank you so much to the Buckeye Book Fair for the opportunity to virtually visit with you today. I'm here to talk about my recent picture book, No Voice Too Small, 14 Young Americans Making History. I believe children can learn a lot from true stories, and especially those told from the point of view of someone's experiences. And I've heard a lot of stories from different points of view, having lived and worked different places around the world. So it's my honor to work on No Voice Too Small and share so many inspiring stories about youth with kids. Students may have, they know what an author and an illustrator do, but they may not be familiar with the role of editors. No Voice Too Small has 3 editors, Lindsay Metcalf, myself, and Jeanette Bradley. Jeanette Bradley was also the illustrator. As editors, we collaborated and managed the entire project that included 14 youth, their proxies, 14 poets, and editorial comments and revisions, including those from our editor at Charlesbridge. So this book has a lot of moving parts. And as a work of nonfiction, there was a ton of research involved. We had to research the contemporary youth to feature, the poets who agreed to write about them. They wrote a nonfiction biography poem about them. So they had to research the youth that they were going to write about. The book ended up with many different poetry forms and layers of text. So there's something for readers of different ages. Oops. Sorry. So when you open the book, readers are introduced to the young activists. On the end papers, there are quotes as from each of them featured. There's an activity that I wrote for the educational guide using the idea behind these quotes. The activity is called In My Opinion, which explores the things students believe and asks them to think critically about why they have those opinions. This is a book of nonfiction, so the illustrations had to be realistic. Students also learn a lot about each young person from how the illustrator drew their portraits and also the things she included in the art. This is Mari, the girl from the cover holding the bullhorn. At age 8, she's one of the youngest subjects in the book, and you can tell a lot about her character from Jeanette's illustration of her. One day, something terrible happened in the city where she lives, and Mari became the someone who did something about it. Because Mari believes you're never too young or too small to change the world. Now, I said that this book is a poetry collection and an anthology, but it's much more. Each activist has their own spread and includes 3 different layers of supplementary text. For example, Mari's poem is Little Miss Flint. It's a concrete poem written by Carol Boston Weatherford. When students read about Mari, they find out what happened in her city, why she took action, and why the poet wrote her poem in the shape of a water bottle. Now, Mari did a lot of things to solve her problem, but she's well known for a visit from President Obama after she wrote him a letter. So the tip we have for the readers at the bottom of her page says, in your city or state, who has the power to make things change? Write a letter and ask for what you need. You'll notice all of the youth in the book have different interests and different actions because there are many ways to be an activist or an advocate. Readers meet young people like DJ Annie Red, an anti-bullying ambassador speaking out using her music. Ziad Ahmed is an anti-racist activist. Judy Adams speaks up about living with Down syndrome. And Zari Kepra is a gun violence awareness activist. After losing a friend in high school to gun violence, Zari helped start Project Orange Tree, a gun violence awareness organization. Her poem, The Orange Tree, written by Andrea Loney, uses imagery and metaphor to help kids grasp how movements work. The poem compares the growth of Project Orange Tree to planting a tree and watching the movement and the message grow and spread like an orchard. We've created many different resources for schools. We have an educational activity guide, a book club on Flipgrid, and a YouTube playlist. And we realize that kids may not really understand how to get started, even if they're interested in a topic. So we actually have some ideas for their, if they wanted to get involved. In the book, the last spread of the book, we have some questions, and we also have more ideas in the activity guide so they can get started. Schools can find instructional content and students can interact on our book club, which is featured at the Flipgrid's Discovery Library. And the videos include mini workshops, poetry readings, and inspirational messages from some of our young activists. Finally, the message we wanted the kids to take away from this book is their voices matter. And we wanted to inspire and empower them to step up to the mic. Lindsay, Jeanette, and I stepped up to the mic when we wrote this book because we know kids can make a difference. So we ask you to make a promise to use their voices and take the No Voice Too Small pledge. The pledge comes from the last poem in the book, Make Some Noise. Each of us can be the someone who does something. We can speak our heartache, sing our joy, and share our dreams. We may be small, but we can Roar! Thanks.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. The number of resources you have available are just incredible. So thank you so much. Teachers appreciate it. So next up, we have Tricia Springstubb.
Yeah, I had to turn my light on. It's getting
Oh,
dark
you're good.
earlier these days.
You're fine.
I just want to say I looked through everybody's books before this panel began, and I just think it's so wonderful that we all have in common that we're writing really about diversity, kindness, and connection. And you know, teachers can use any of our books, I think, to help foster classrooms that are friendlier, more empathetic, and more inclusive. And I think all educators know that when kids feel safe and valued, they learn better. So just starting from that, I think all the books here are great boosts for kids and for literacy and for classrooms. My book is Khalil and Mr. Haggerty and the Backyard Treasures. It's a book about a very unlikely friendship between young, curious newcomer to this country, Khalil, and old, kind of lonesome, kind of grumpy Mr. Haggerty, and the friendship that they forge. It's a story about finding connection where you least expect it. As Keila said, about the power in every child's voice, the power of language to bring us together, and how one kindness can lead to another. And it's also about chocolate cake, and that's pretty important. The way I think teachers can use it in classrooms is a number of different ways. After reading it, it can spark discussions about, you know, what is friendship? You know, what is a true friend? Some of our friendships happen really easily and sort of spontaneously. Others take maybe more time and more care and more thought, and those can wind up being the deepest and most lasting friendships of all. You know, kids can talk about, does a friend have to look like you? Does he or she have to be your age or from your same background? What makes a true friend? And then they can write personal narratives based on their own experience of making a friend and being a friend. And then the book is also, of course, about treasure. And that can spark discussions about, well, what is a treasure? You know, is a treasure always something that we hold in our hands, or can it be something more ephemeral? Can a treasure be something we hold in our hearts? A person, a memory, an experience, the smell of our father's bread baking, the sound of our cat purring. Kids can write poems. List poems are easy and fun things to do, where they can make a list of what they treasure. They can illustrate them. Teachers can maybe make a treasure box in the classroom where all the kids can compile their poems and share them. Of course, also, they can have a treasure hunt, which can involve, you know, a map and clues. So those are just a few ways of both writing and reading and discussion that kids can use the book. And my final advice would be, whenever you're reading this book, make sure you have some chocolate cake nearby, because by the time you get to the end, you are going to want a big slice of it. So.
Wonderful, duly noted. And if people want to learn a little bit more about you and other options in terms of visits and virtual visits and things like that, where should they go?
My website, triciaspringstubb.com, it has lots of fun suggestions, more than I've just said, for ways to use this book and all my other books. I have books for kids, as the introduction said, from picture books through middle grade. And also, you can contact me that way if you'd like to do a virtual visit. I've done tons and tons of in-person visits. As of tomorrow, I'm going to do my first virtual visit. I'm really looking forward to that because I so miss interacting with students and teachers. And I'll be talking about how I became a writer, which was a very kind of circuitous route. How I make my books from that first inspiration, that first idea, through revision, through drafting, revision, more revision, more revision, more revision, until the finally getting a book that's good enough that I can share it with kids and the rest of the world. And I will try to make it, when I visit in person, it's very interactive. I'll try as much as I can to make that happen online too. And if teachers are interested in having me come, I always like to talk ahead of time and find out, what is your focus? What do you really want your kids to get out of this presentation, so we can work together and make that happen. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Look forward to tomorrow too.
Yes.
All right. Next up, we have Thrity Umrigar.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. So I actually have a couple questions about your latest book. So can you give us just a quick synopsis of the book?
Sure. So I had 2 children's books come out this fall. This one,
okay.
The one I'll be talking about, which unfortunately, here we go.
Yep,
It's
there it
called
is.
Sugar and Milk. It's the evening light, I think. And this other one, which is called Bini's Diwali. And Diwali is the Hindu Festival of Lights, which actually begins this coming Saturday, I believe. But
Fitting.
for our purposes today, we will be talking about Sugar and Milk. And what I did in this book, Andrew, is I basically retold an ancient legend that I grew up hearing. And it was very inspiring to me. And in some ways, it's a story about immigration. It's a story about how my Persian ancestors came to India really 1,000 years ago as political refugees and basically asked to be let in. And the story goes that the Hindu king met them at the shores of this place in India where their ships had landed. He had absolutely no intention of letting them in, because why would he? They didn't speak a common language, etc. But through an act of wit and really the power of language, it was a gesture by this Zoroastrian, that's the name of the religion of these people, the Zoroastrian king. He won over the Hindu ruler of this region with his wit and his gesture. And this is a story that when I came to this country as an immigrant at the age of 21 to go to grad school, it sort of acted as a kind of blueprint for me as to how to conduct myself in my new country, and I have told this story because it's really a beautiful story about the importance of bringing kindness and sweetness, just like sugar and milk makes the milk sweeter. That's what we are called upon to do wherever we go, in whatever communities we find ourselves in. And I have always loved this story. And so, as you may know, I write primarily, I'm a writer of fiction, of novels for adults. And so whenever I would do a book talk, I would usually end it by telling my audiences this story. And the response from people, no matter what part of the country I was in, was uniform. I mean, people would visibly soften, they would sigh, they would laugh, they would start clapping. And then a couple of years ago, I thought, this story, in a sense, is wasted on adults. The true audience for this story is children, because it's a story about kindness. It's a story about generosity and hospitality. It's a story about being large-hearted and being open-hearted. And given everything that we are going through as a country right now, given the sort of coarseness of the rhetoric against immigrants and immigration, I just thought it was time to tell a good, uplifting story that was a story of kindness, of softening our hearts rather than hardening them, you know. So I really believe in the power of storytelling. I've seen the difference that good stories have made in my own life, including this one from the time I was this high. And so I just thought this was the right audience and the right time to tell this story.
Thank you. So after, if a teacher uses this book in their instruction, do you have any tips or examples of maybe some discussion topics that they could utilize in their classroom after teaching the book or teaching with the book?
It's a great question. So I'm thinking of two things that come to mind almost immediately, right? One is you could have the children in the classroom spend the next week doing an experiment, so that every time, say, they go shopping with their parent, or, you know, right now during COVID, I realize things are a little hard, but anytime they even go for a walk with their parents, and maybe they're wearing a mask depending on their ages, but if they can just smile and say hello to every single person that they pass one day, and then perhaps the next day do the opposite, you know, not acknowledge whoever they come in contact with. I would just like for them to find out for themselves what a difference it makes, right? It's like when you smile, the world smiles back at you. And this book actually ends on that very positive note. You know, I've sort of modernized this ancient legend to a young girl coming to the United States. We don't know why, but she's with her aunt and uncle, and she's terribly homesick and she's terribly depressed. And it's after hearing this legend that she realizes it's on her. It's up to her to spread, you know, sort of the seeds of sugar, if you will, seeds of kindness wherever she goes. And her whole experience changes. So I would just like to do that as a kind of experiment with the children. And the other more academic exercise would be to look in other cultures for similar stories about kindness and hospitality and, you know, strangers being welcomed in. Because I have a feeling that almost every country, every civilization on earth has their vision of such a story. You know, and I think that would be a great exercise for students to do with their teachers.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. If people are interested in learning more about you and your works, is there a website that they could go to?
It's just my last name, Umrigar. So it's www.umrigar.com, and Umrigar is with a U, Umrigar.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It was a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you.
And now we're going to move on to our last author, Mr. Richard Cordry.
Cowdrey, but close enough.
Cowdrey, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. Well, thank you, Andrew. And I want to thank Julia Weisenberg and the Buckeye Book Fair for hosting this. The Buckeye Book Fair pre-COVID had become my favorite event. I've been at this for a while now, illustrating children's books. And I think I had been attending the Buckeye Book Fair for the past 12 years. And I just love it. The beginning of November in the Midwest in Ohio, getting up early and driving up to Worcester. It had been something I really looked forward to. And so, though this works, I miss that event.
There's always next year, right?
So yeah, I hope so. I mean, many years after.
Right.
So yeah, this year I was going to be there signing my latest Fiona book, Fiona, It's Bedtime, which I don't know if you flashed up there and I missed it, but it doesn't matter.
Yep, it's up on the
Or
screen
maybe there.
now. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's Fiona, It's Bedtime. And it's the third installment of the Fiona the Hippo series of books. And I'm kind of going to the end, but I'm going to go ahead and say it here. I'm contracted for 3 more. So Fiona will continue to tell her story. And for those who are not aware of Fiona, she is a real hippo that was born at the Cincinnati Zoo. And she was born premature. And most hippos, when they're born, are around 100 pounds. And Fiona was 29 pounds. So they really didn't think she was going to make it. So the people at the zoo called in nurses from Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, and they came over and nursed her back to life. And so somebody had the foresight to be recording the whole thing on Facebook. And as a result, Fiona and her story were, everybody internationally, she became a star. She had fans and has fans in Japan and Australia, Romania, all over the world. People were inspired by her story. And so with Zondervan, my publisher, we decided to do the first book, Fiona the Hippo, which tells her story, and she becomes kind of a hero of sorts, and that she makes it through. And then her little tagline is, "I've got this." So for every difficulty she runs up against, Fiona says, "I've got this." And so it apparently touched a nerve, because it was a New York Times bestseller, or it made the New York Times best-selling list. And so we went to the next book, which was A Very Fiona Christmas, which also did very well. And in fact, this year, I think it's released now. And I don't know, my pictures or the book cover is still up there. I don't know if you can see this.
Not yet, but here we go.
Okay. Well, they're releasing, Zondervan and HarperCollins are releasing a board book, A Very Fiona Christmas board book, and it lights up.
Oh, cool.
How about that? So, yeah, so board book, so the kids can read it and they can also chew on it, which is very nice. I occasionally like to do that. So with her bedtime story, we thought we'd take a break from the stories and just have individual little vignettes that are bedtime stories with all the different animals Fiona has befriended at the zoo. So the polar bears, the cheetahs, the otters, she goes around the zoo and tells everybody good night. And so each illustration has the mother with a few of her babies, and there's a nice little poem with it. And they're just very sweet, touching illustrations, and just a classic bedtime book to read to your children at night. And it's unfortunate the release date was right when COVID hit. We had scheduled schools and zoos and my favorite, which are children's hospitals across the country, where we were going to have slumber parties. And, so the kids at the schools or the hospital, whatever, would bring their favorite stuffed animal or blankie or whatever. And, and I was going to dress up in a big hippo costume, which is, I was really looking forward to that. And we were going to read Fiona, It's Bedtime. So that still may happen depending on what happens in the months ahead. But there's a new book that'll be coming out, I think, in October. So, and I'm not going to give that one away, but right now I just want to want to concentrate on Fiona, It's Bedtime, because it's a wonderful book, and it was just very unfortunately timed.
Yeah. So how could teachers use, well, I suppose Fiona, It's Bedtime, but maybe another Fiona book too. How might they use those books in their classroom?
Good question. The most obvious is a reading book. As a young child, I've always had the gift of being an artist. And so when I was young, what books attracted me were the ones visually that were inviting. And that's what the bridge to reading was for me. I was first attracted by the pictures, and then I wanted to know what the story was. So, I've had that story told to me so many times as I've traveled around, signing Fiona all over the country, and the kids that just love her so much that they, were encouraged to read, and I love that. And again, the I've got this part of the story where she had issues being, premature, and the small, tiny little hippo, but she was able to overcome and had a great attitude about her. And so those are two good ways to use it.
Great. Well, thanks. If people want to learn more about you and your work, where can they go?
Well, my website is about 15 years old. It's terrible. And so I'm in the process. I've got somebody working on it, and I'm very excited about my new website, and it should be out hopefully within a month. And they would go to www.rcowdrey.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and...
You're welcome. It was great.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Actually, you know what? I just got a request from Judy to share her screen. She had something to add real quick, so I'm going to let Judy share her screen just for a moment, and then I'll give us a little bit of a closure. So it's off to you, Judy.
Thank you. It was just I love hearing all of you talk, and so many of the things made me think of other things, which is classic. But I just had one thing in particular that I wanted to show because this is my book, All Kinds of Kindness. And this page in particular made me think when Keila was talking about protests and kids doing things and how they can do things no matter what their age. And granted, this is a board book, but it can be used with any age because the concept is timeless and ageless. But this picture in particular is kind of an easy way into standing up for something and showing that you care. So that popped into my mind while I was listening to Keila talk about all of those amazing kid activists. And many other things came up while I was while everyone was speaking, but I'm not going to show you every page of my book. But I just love to hear what everybody had to say today and how much of us talked about kindness, which is so nice to hear right now. So,
absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. All right. So this is our contact information. If you are interested, well, let me go back here real quick. If you're interested in contacting either Buckeye Book Fair or Tri-County ESC, you can find my email address and then Buckeye Book Fair's email address on this slide. I want to remind you that Buckeye Book Fair is currently going on virtually. So go to buckeyebookfair.org if you are interested in purchasing some of the books that were talked about in today's session. And there are a ton of other resources as well. So I highly encourage you to go to buckeyebookfair.org. And if you are interested in learning more about Tri-County ESC, you can go to our website at youresc.k12.ohio.us. Now, if you need professional development contact hours, you can either type in the URL that is on your screen now, or you can use the QR code reader on your phone and complete the short survey. I will go ahead and I'll link this in the chat after I move on to the next slide. That way you have a clickable link that you can go to if you're in the Zoom webinar. But if you're not in the Zoom webinar, if you're watching via live stream, you can just scan that QR code to earn your hour professional development certificate. And last but not least, we just want to thank you all for joining us today. And obviously we want to thank everybody who's helped to make Buckeye Book Fair possible. So thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great evening. And if just want to let you know that we will be here for the rest of the week too. So we'll be back 4 to 5 tomorrow as well. So thanks.